Hello, everyone. Yay! Thanks for joining me once again for the Wheel of the Year. We will get started in just a moment. Um, Welcome to wherever you are. Make yourself at home. In the moments before we actually begin the class, if this is your first time here, hi, welcome. Thanks for joining us. I definitely recommend grab a journal, maybe some art supplies. You might grab your tarot deck. You might grab your natal chart. You might grab a little snack or something to sip on or imbibe in whatever way you enjoy imbibing things. Make it good for you. You know how you learn best. So maybe put this on in the background while you cook dinner or fold laundry or do whatever. But get yourself tucked in because we are about to tuck in on this information. Hello, Purple Table Tarot. Hi, nice to see ya. What's up? Hi, Louise. Hi. Yay, thank you for joining for the first time. Awesome. Hell yeah. There will be, side note, a little bit of cussing, or maybe a lot, depending on how it rolls out. We don't keep things PG-13 here. Safe or not safe for work, depending on where you work. I work from home, so I act a fool. Hello, hello, hello. Yay. Yay. As I said, we'll get started here in just a second. Thank you for asking about my back. It is still a little pissed off. My energy levels may not be quite as high as they usually are because as I said in the podcast yesterday, I'm medicated for your and my safety right now. And I generally don't do the pills. The pills are not my family of substance of choice. So they kind of rock me a little bit. Like doesn't really matter what they are supposed to do. They kind of set me off a little bit. So we'll see. We'll see. Yep, go grab headphones if you are around folks who may or may not want to listen to me go on about this material. Absolutely. And we will get started here in just a moment. When I was teaching these classes really live, 6:05 was the time. It's like, hey guys, we got to start on time. We got a lot of stuff to cover. Yep. Oh yeah, same for you. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And it's a weird realm of chemicals and drugs over there in the world of pills. They're doing some wacky stuff. All right. It is 6:05. We're going to get started. So, first and foremost, hi, I'm Megan Angus, and this is the Wheel of the Year 2023 cycle, Lughnasadh, it's pronounced both ways, the first harvest. And we're going to get into what all of those words and titles mean. Hi, Darlene. Thanks for joining us. If this is your first time here, put a sunflower in the chat. If you have been here before, put a sun in the chat. Just want to see, I love doing that. And, see what's the ratio to newbie fresh meat versus you old timers. But yes, I am Megan Angus. This is Lughnasadh, Wheel of the Year, Lughnasadh, 2023 cycle. And first and foremost, these classes are being taught from unceded Duwamish territory, aka Seattle, Washington. So many thank yous to the native folks who attended this land before the white colonizers showed up. And if you are wanting to support those groups of folks, you can go and sign the petition for federal recognition for the Duwamish tribe. You can find that on change.org. They're trying to get to 150,000 signatures to press the federal government for federal recognition of the tribe on the land of one of the richest cities in the country. Just little things like that. So big thank yous to those folks. We are going to talk about a lot of stuff tonight. If if you've been here before, you know. We're going to talk about a lot of different things tonight. We're going to talk about a lot of different magical paradigms and ways of looking at magical ideas and all of that good stuff. And I will use a lot of different language to discuss these things. A lot of what we think of as Wicca or modern paganism is based in a duality or binary paradigm, and that is a magical paradigm. It's not the magical paradigm. There are infinite magical paradigms, but duality and binary thinking and worldview is really embedded in a lot of paganism. So we'll switch back and forth between thinking about things in a binary and thinking about things in a broader scope. I do refer to gender here because we are talking about old concepts and new concepts. But when I'm talking about goddesses, when I'm talking about quote unquote feminine stuff, what I'm talking about is that energy that is in all beings to receive, to hold, to pull in. And when I am talking about masculine stuff, quote unquote, this is energy that all beings have to thrust, to be extrovert, to put out into the world. And again, these are energies that all of us have access to in various measures. Doesn't really matter what gender we are, what gender we were born as. We all have access to this stuff. The gods don't hold out. They certainly do not hold out. This is always an exciting class for me to teach because Lughnasadh is the first class that I started teaching, started with when I started teaching the Wheel of the Year way back in 2015. So we are embarking on the 9th cycle of the Wheel of the Year. I've been doing this almost every 6 to 7 weeks since 2015. And you know what? I'm sick of it. No. It just keeps getting better and better every year. So thanks for being here. Thanks for joining me on this wacky adventure. If you want to work with me, there are places and ways to work with me. That's not it though. Don't look at that. Don't look at that either. I'm a trained professional and I know what I'm doing. Here we go. I offer tarot readings. I offer astrology readings. I do pagan spirituality consultations, magical consultations. I do sometimes tarot mentorship. I have a Patreon. I offer these live classes on YouTube for free, thanks to the support of my patrons. But patrons get lots more stuff behind the scenes. They get to see writing that I don't put out publicly. They get to see a lot of writing that first, and then a year later I will publish it publicly. They get access to videos that I don't put out and podcasts that I don't put out publicly, etc., etc., etc. So join us there at Patreon if somehow this 2 hours isn't enough information for you. Oh my goodness, there's so much more. I will be referring to a workbook quite frequently this evening. That's something that patrons have access to as well, etc., etc. Okay, also I do a weekly podcast called Spinning the Wheel where we get into the granular elements of the stuff that we are going to overview tonight. That is put out weekly. I do have a very irregular newsletter and, of course, the blog on my website. And you can follow me on all of the evil social medias that are out there. I am no longer on Twitter. I am now on Blue Sky. I have no allegiance to any of these particular platforms, but I'm not going to mess around with Twitter, and I think we all know why. And you can find me under Megan Angus or Megan Angus Witch pretty much everywhere. Do I have my mentorships open currently? No, I do not. But I'm reorganizing some stuff in the behind the scenes world, and I'm hoping to reopen the tarot mentorship program either this year or at the beginning of next year. I'm trying not to put a lot of pressure on myself around it, but also make it as amazing as it can possibly be for you all. So glad you're interested. Thanks for asking. Some impetus to get my shit together. Okay. That's the shill. That's enough of that. Yeah. Look through my notes. That's great. Okay. We're good. So let us get into Lughnasadh. This wheel was designed. I do this every time. I always point in the wrong direction. This wheel was designed by my good friend Ryan Jack Allred. You can see his name up there in the corner. He's got a website full of amazing illustrations. He is branching out into video and cinematography and all kinds of stuff. So look him up if you're looking for cool stuff. But big thanks to him and his support over the years. Okay, let us start with the Sabbat sign. So this image, this sign, is something that I've found in various books on modern Wicca, modern paganism. I can't trace this back any further than about the 1930s. It may definitely go back further than that, but I don't think it does. Still looking for who created these. I would love to know. But this Sabbat sign for me is a really fantastic image for the overarching themes that we are going to be working with throughout Lughnasadh season. So let's ground ourselves in this moment for just a second. In spring, we have this verdant energy that is curious and naive and foolish and doesn't know any better and is very experimental, is very excited to fuck around and find out. Very excited to try and see what happens. And that is an energy that we are gifted with in spring and also want to cultivate in spring. We are meant to throw lots of seeds in the ground and see what happens and just give it a shot. It's a very why not kind of vibe in spring. As we step into summer, we begin to claim some of those experimentations. And so Lughnasadh is or Lughnasa is our Sabbath that sort of grounds us deeply into the heart of summer, the heart of claiming those projects and becoming determinative about those projects, as well as beginning to reap some of the results from those projects. Not all, but some. And so when we begin summer in Litha, the sun is at the height of its power for us here in the Northern Hemisphere. The sun is at its zenith. It's at the top of the sky, and it's as high as it's going to go. The days are as long as they could get. And through Litha season, the majority of July, basically, we're riding very, very high. As we step into Lughnasadh, Sabbat, and season, we're still in that moment momentarily. And then through the course of August and into September, we begin to notice how the days are starting to get a little shorter and a little shorter and a little shorter. It's still warm outside. It's still beautiful. The sun is still doing its thing. Everything is blooming. Lots of stuff is coming to fruition. And there is sort of this creeping sense in the background that things are going to be shutting down at some point. I know, how could I possibly talk about that here in the midst of all of this glowing power and energy? Well, that's what we're doing in Lughnasadh season. We're witnessing the shift from the sun being at its highest high to not quite so high. And so I see that in this image. I see that in this symbol where that marker is really saying, like, here's the standing up point, right? Here's I'm at my highest, and I can only go down. Either direction I go, it's only down from here. And so for me, that's really what's up. There's also a lot of hunting that happens in this season, and this does kind of look like a bow and arrow to me, but that's a bit more abstract. The concentrated imagery here is really around harvesting and the natural world, the vegetative world. So that's our Sabbat sign, and that's a cue for us that we are going to be slowly rolling down the hill and getting lower, getting bent. Okay, so the witches' work that we are focused most deeply on at this time of year is power, maturation, leadership, production, prophecy, and ancestor work. So let's talk about it. As I said, in spring, we are experimenting, we're trying stuff out, we're playing at things. And as we step into summer, we have to mature a bit and we have to claim some of that stuff. And that maturation requires from us sometimes some really difficult decision making. Sometimes it requires us to bear situations that are very difficult or frustrating, and we kind of have to do it. And in that moment, we are also exercising our power, whatever that is. We are exercising the capacity that we have to determine things and claim things and protect things and see things through to their finish. The deities that we work with at this time of year, a lot of them have birthdays at this time of year. There's a lot of deities that are born at this time of year, especially in the Egyptian pantheon. We'll talk about that more in just a minute, but the birth is not so much the focus as their sovereignty is the focus. Their queenship or their kingship or their royalness is the focus, and that goes for us too. This is really a season where we want to strut a little bit. We want to show out a little bit. We are meant to sort of flex the power that we have in this season to make stuff happen or to see things through to fruition. So power is a big thing. And we'll talk about this more later. I'm going to say that like 80,000 times for those of you who are new here. But the astrology that we have this year during Lughnasadh really emphasizes this conversation around power and what is our relationship to power. How are we dealing with having power or not having power? How are we dealing with the people and the systems that represent power and power dynamics around us? All of that. So it's a bit heightened this year in Lughnasadh season. And as an aside, I just posted a big giant piece on Patreon about us stepping into Leo season and Lughnasadh season and a big sort of granular look at the astrology of this season, if you're wanting to know more than what we can cover in this class. So there's a lot of emphasis on this idea, and there's a lot of emphasis on what are we doing with it and how are we accessing it. And that, again, weaves us right back into the word maturation. If we are handed power and we have not dealt with our shit, it's going to show, right? Our less mature self is going to want to take control. We might want to seek revenge against people. We might want to make sure that we get ours. Because we are in a place where we can flex our power and make that type of stuff happen. And it's not hard to imagine that. We can literally just look outside at world leaders and see the way that people who have power conduct themselves in this world. Look at the billionaires of this world and what they could do with their power and what they choose to do with their power. Oh yeah, by the way, leftist rants abound here on the classes. So hi, your leftist witch screaming about billionaires already. We're 30 seconds into the live stream, but it's the truth, and a big part of that is that those people haven't dealt with themselves. They haven't dealt with their internal issues. They haven't dealt with, whatever it was. Their dad was mean to them when they were a kid or whatever the root of their problems are. They've never had to face it, and they're choosing not to face it. And it's very, very obvious in the ways that they conduct themselves in the world with the power that they have been gifted. And that is something also I think that's very, very important in Lughnasadh season. Some of the power that we wield, and we all have some level of power in our life. Some of the power that we wield, we have generated ourselves. We have created that thing within ourselves. But some of the power that we wield is a gift. It's a gift from community. It's a gift from our ancestors. It's a gift from circumstance and chance or fate or the deities or whatever. But not all of it is ours. Some of it, maybe a lot of it, is on loan. And And maybe there's a record being kept somewhere, maybe there's a tab that's running up somewhere that's going to have to be cashed out at some point. So just thinking about those types of things as we step in Lunasa season. Where do I have agency? Where do I have power? And how am I choosing to utilize that in the world? And is that those moments when I am in charge? Is that also a moment where some of my Uki shadow work comes up? Yes, we're already here. Again, 30 seconds into the live stream, and this is where we're at in the conversation. So, power, maturation, and leadership, we can see how these three things weave together and sit with each other, foster and support each other, and reveal the work that we have yet to do in our process. Okay, what else are we working with in Lunasa season? Production, prophecy, and ancestor work. Well, the production thing is pretty straightforward. If we look around the Northern Hemisphere, the grain harvest has already begun. It started back in June, and it will run all the way through July and all the way through August. And if you could see the planet as the grain comes to harvest, it's like this golden band that starts near the equator and rises up towards the North Pole as the grains around the planet come into ripeness and fruition, and the green turns to gold. Another esoteric theme here in our magic and our witchcraft. And so we are witnessing the planet produce. We are witnessing humans labor and produce through their labor. And the sun is high, it's beautiful outside. Let's get to work. Let's get stuff done. It's way easier to get stuff done at this time of year than it is in the heart of summer as well when it comes to personal work. We've got a nice bright sun in the sky lending us a bunch of serotonin, painting our house, or doing repairs, all of that kind of stuff, right? Attending to the physical world, attending to the physical, well, all of the bodies. It's easier, in a sense. It's easier now in this portion of the year. So let's use it while we have it. Prophecy and ancestor work. Okay, now this speaks to some of the other parts of Lughnasadh. We have been talking about power, and we've been talking about strength, and we've been talking about, fullness and ripeness and production and things coming into fruition and ripeness. Well, first off, we know it's not going to last forever. But secondly, and maybe more importantly, our ancient ancestor scientists, ancient ancestor farmers, and whatnot, they knew that however the grain harvest went, really sort of dictated how the rest of the year was going to roll out. And by year, I actually mean the next 9 months to 12 months, kind of from now until next spring or early summer. Because the grain harvest not only is food for us humans, but it's also food for the livestock. And if there is not enough grain, then we can't bring that livestock all the way through winter, which means all of the resources that livestock represents, whether it's meat, bless them, whether it's meat or it's leather or it's tallow that is going to be turned into candles, like whatever it was that civilization was going to get from their livestock, it's not going to be there. And so how the grain harvest comes to fruition and the bounty that is produced becomes this sort of earmark of how are things going to roll out for the rest of the year. So prophecy is something that's really potent sort of behind the scenes. And again, as I talked about before, we're at the height and it's only down from here, right? So how is that decline going to go? Is it going to go easy or is it going to go hard? Is it going to go short or slow or is it going to go fast, quick? That stuff. And so folks would absolutely be attending to their soothsayers, their seers, their mediums, their guides, their fortune tellers, their medicine folk for advice. How best to get the most out of their crops, but also how best to utilize whatever it is that the earth has managed to produce for us in that turn. Okay, and then ancestor work. And this is deeply embedded throughout Lughnasadh season. First off, August is the most war-torn month of the year. When we look back through the last 10,000-ish years of human history, August is the month where we see the most wars. It's unfortunately true still today. And we don't need astrology or witchcraft to tell us that that is not cool, but here we are. And so, just in and of itself, war kills people, right? And so there's ancestor worship right there in the sense of the innocent dead who die during war, right? Yes, soldiers die, but lots and lots and lots of innocent bystanders die too. And so saying thank you, saying goodbye, and trying to send those people off to their rest is inherent in a lot of the Lughnasadh stuff. The very name of this holiday comes from a god named Lugh, or Lugh. We'll talk about him in just a second. And his Taltian games that he holds for his foster mother who dies at this time of year. So deeply embedded in our work here is saying thanks and giving offerings to the sacred dead. But also, for many, many civilizations, folks who had died were thought to live on in a form underground. And in many civilizations, it's thought that those blessed dead, our dead ancestors under the soil, are actually helping push up the crops that are coming to ripeness now. Whoa, right? Whoa. So there also is something about the sacred dead assisting us in this moment as we're witnessing this process take place. And then past all of that stuff, it's the wisdom passed down from ancestors that teach us about these cycles in the first place. And it's the wisdom from previous generations that are going to help us understand what to do when the bounty is massive, or how to handle it when the bounty is wimpy and looks like it's not going to be enough. How did they get through those times? Because obviously they did. We're here, right? So somehow our sacred ancestors were able to handle those challenges that came upon them and make it through another winter, and make it through another spring and another summer and another fall and another winter. Hence why we're here, to be able to stand on their shoulders and move forward. So ancestor work, very, very potent stuff as we are moving through Lughnasadh season. Okay, so some other names for this holiday. Actually, do I want to talk about that right now? We're going to scooch. We're going to scooch over to this. I want to give a little focus to a couple of our potent deities that we're working with. So Lugh, let's talk about that guy first, right? Because this is the deity that this holiday is named after. Lugh Lamfiara is one way of pronouncing his name. And this is Lugh the long-handed or long-armed. And that phrase means equally skilled in all arts. That's one way of translating his name. Another reason why folks think that he was called the long-handed or the long-armed was because of his incredible skill with a spear. And he was, able to throw this spear miles, basically. But also, another definition or another way of interpreting the long-handed was his reach as a ruler, as a king. And so his hand reached across the land. His rulership reached across the land. This is a deity that comes to us from Ireland. I love this particular carving of him, showing him with 3 faces. That's something that comes up in paganism a little bit, doesn't it? He was a member of the Tuatha Dé Danann, who are a mythical group of beings from ancient Irish history. We don't have time to go into it here, but check those folks out. They maybe were real people, maybe they were, say, spiritual beings, maybe a little bit of both, but he's descended from those folks. He was or is, I really should say, because this is a living god. A lot of people still worship him. he was a sovereign, and that was one of the main archetypal elements of his being, is that he was a leader. Specifically, he represented leadership, and he stood in the position of being a leader, aka responsible for the group. Also a warrior, also a master crafter, and steady with his hand, incredibly gifted with all of these wild skills. And between him and his foster mother, some of the skills of agriculture were taught to the people that were under his rule. He is also cast as a savior in some of the myths around him. He was a healer, and he is also a sun slash storm god. And the sun storm thing is interesting because some cultures or some time periods or some of the myths about him only recognize one or only recognize the other, and a few recognize both. But whatever it was, he kind of had a lot of power over, how are the crops going to grow, and what kind of conditions are they going to be growing in. So he oversees the development of skills and mastery. He oversees oaths. He is very concerned with people telling the truth and protecting the law, whatever that means for the civilization that we're talking about, and of course, the harvest. And glancing at my notes here, Irish witches would celebrate Dana, who is Lugh's wife, and also would celebrate his ritual death. So this is a super fun thing. A lot of the vegetation gods that we celebrate in paganism are going to begin either dying or falling down, losing their power in some way. And we're going to talk about an archetype of this in just a second. So Lugh definitely has his high point, but then there's a stumble at some point in his myths as well. The Welsh equivalent is Lugh Law Gifts, the lion with the steady hand, the shining one with the skillful hand. You can see in all of these different traditions how this idea of Lugh being very skilled and powerful and in charge is sort of reiterated over and over again. In one of his myths, Lugh blinds another deity named Balor, who, in various myths, is either his father or his grandfather. And this is a theme that we see repeated in pagan myths around gods over and over and over again, especially around winter solstice and summer solstice. And so this being the Sabbat coming right after, it makes sense to see this here. And through this battle, Lugh wins agriculture. He wins the skills of agriculture and then shares them with people. So this idea of a wounding or a blinding of some type is also really important in and of itself. A lot of the vegetation deities that we see riding high momentarily and then going down receive some kind of a wound to the head or the neck or both. They're blinded, their mouth is cut, their head is cut off, they're decapitated. Maybe they're knocked on the head. Sometimes it was a three-part death, which we also see in our bog bodies that are possibly related to this holiday, esoterically anyways. So there's something about the face, there's something about the head, and we can think of a pretty easy connection there with the figurehead, right? The head of an organization, the head of a movement. It's literally the same idea. Lugh representing the top of something or the spear tip of something or the head of something, and then, being in charge of knocking that head off or having his head knocked off, or, any of the other vegetation deities that we're thinking about or working with at this time of year, having some sort of something happen to their head to mark them as no longer the head of that thing. Possibly even we could say no longer fit to be the head of that thing that we're talking about. Okay, so from Lugh, we travel to another one of my very favorite deities, Crom Dubh, aka Crom Crook. And Crom Cruach probably came before Lugh. This is a pre-Christian god, and he represents, as I say here on the slide, vegetation gods after the harvest. And I like to think in my mind of the grain standing nice and tall, and then at some point that head falls over. Um, Partly because it has become so ripe with grain. And that is one way that we can think of Crom Cruach or Crom Dub as being so ripe that he can't even keep his head up anymore. It falls. But also, this is the grains after harvest, where the field, all the grains have sort of been knocked over to the side. And this deity represents that fall. Crom Cruach means bent or crooked or stooped. Or, excuse me, Crom means that. Dub means dark. Cruach means pile or heap or mound or stack, as in peat or our piles of hay or piles of grain that we're harvesting, or even piles of bodies. And we have lots of different deities that play this role of the fallen one, the bent one, the crooked one. John Barleycorn is a classic example, and there's, John Barleycorn Must Die is an incredible song. I highly recommend going and finding it. Patrons, it's in your Lughnasadh playlist on Spotify. But Crom would have been buried up to his head, again, for 3 days. Hey, that 3-day thing, that's kind of a big deal with some religions, isn't it? Yeah, that's kind of a big deal. And sometimes he was sacrificed, well, often he was sacrificed, or some effigy representing him was sacrificed on the last Sunday of July, which would get us very close to Lughnasadh, August 1st. And there were, and still are, pilgrimages up to the top of sacred hills in Ireland, Scotland, and Wales, and people roll down the hill, or they hike to a lower hill and then witness the sun roll down the side of a sacred hill a distance away. And all together, this is a really important collection of vegetation god stuff that we're looking at, because there is this very intense emphasis on strength and power and fullness and ripeness. And then there's also this very strong emphasis on that is falling, that is declining, that is coming back down. And not to be super vulgar, but just super realistic, we can think of some body parts that go through this too on certain people, right? Yeah. Now, what's very, very interesting to me is not just erect penises, but sometimes those are sometimes those are interesting to me. During Ostara/Beltane season, back in spring, the holidays that are kind of on the opposite side of the wheel from where we are now, in a sense, there is an Egyptian deity that we can work with named Benebjedet. And Benebjedet was depicted with obelisks at a 45-degree angle. And this was on the rise. This was the ascending god, the erecting god, and very much the erecting god. The Egyptians did not shy away from that kind of symbolism at all. And here we are kind of on the other side of the wheel, or at the very least on the other side of, sort of an equal distance on the other side from summer solstice. And now we have a deity that is the falling god, the deflating god. Crom Dub or Crom Cruach's stones throughout Western Europe, where we find them, are stones that are buried in the ground at a tilt or at an angle. So they are never standing upright. They are always displaying at a tilt on the descend, right? On the descent. Cool stuff. And very straightforward in some important ways. Okay, so that said, check this out. This is the Crom Dub stone. And we find this in Grange Stone Circle in County Limerick, Ireland. This is a Neolithic site that's approximately 4,600 years old. And this is this is the big stone that is a part of a big stone circle. Oh, there's Crom again. Here we go. And this stone circle has some very, very interesting features. One, there's 113 stones here. That marks a lot of different stuff. Two, the ground on the outside of the circle is higher. And the stone circle itself is sort of this demarcation that then it goes down into a pit. Not a pit, but it drops by a foot or two. Also, in the center of this circle was discovered a hole, a post hole. Was there a wooden post there at some point? Maybe. Was there a stone post there at some point? Maybe. We don't know. But a circle with a post in the center, that's a threshing floor. That's a place where beasts of burden, cattle or horses would have been roped up and brought in to trod over the grains that were being harvested in. So right here we have that. Okay, cool. Why am I bringing it up in this class? Well, as I mentioned, that stone is the Crom Dubh stone. This is known as that. And in this megalithic site, just like lots of other megalithic sites, we have markers that align with the winter and summer solstices. We have markers that align with the spring and fall equinoxes. And those are things that we see in lots of megalithic sites all over the world, not even just in the Northern Hemisphere, but the Southern Hemisphere as well. But we also have markers that mark where we mark today the modern Sabbats. There's a lot of conjecture around, are we really seeing something that's marking all 8 Sabbats? Because we don't have any civilizations that for sure celebrated all 8 Sabbats. Tangent, if you're new, a little side quest here. The idea of the Wheel of the Year in the way that we celebrate it now as modern pagans seems to be a modern invention. We cannot find any civilizations that celebrated all 8 Sabbats. They might celebrate 2 or 3 or 4 or even 6, but they wouldn't even necessarily celebrate all the same 2, 3, or 4 or 6. These guys did that one, those guys did that one, but we do think that the markers, where the time markers, as in where we are in our orbit around the sun, moving, and the sun moving against the constellations in the sky, that those points were things that people marked. Even if they didn't have a holiday to celebrate them, they paid attention to them. This ring marks the solar points where we in the modern era have placed the 8 Sabbats of the year. Are we superimposing an idea onto this thing? Maybe. So let's be clear about that, right? Like, we don't know for sure, but it's pretty interesting, right? What a coincidence. I'm sure it's just a coincidence, as we like to say on the podcast and here in the classes. So that's a very interesting thing. But does it specifically mark Lughnasadh? You bet it does. This is taken on summer solstice. And so the sun rises over the Crom Croch stone, or the Crom Dubh stone, which then casts this dark shadow into the heart, the very center of the ring. And then on August 1st, the sun shines directly down this avenue. This is the main entrance into the ring. And so on August 1st, the sun has moved in the sky to some extent, and it shines directly down this avenue. Very interesting, given that modern archaeologists think that this would have been a threshing floor, and that would have been the time of year where there was the most action, right here at Lughnasadh. Pretty cool stuff. Pretty interesting stuff. Okay. So, pausing here for a moment so that I can have a little sippy. Sipperton. Okay. Looking at other names for this holiday, we have Lughnasadh, that's just another way of spelling Lughnasadh. we have midsummer. It is actually. This is the marker of the middle of summer. You'll find when you compare Gregorian versus Julian calendars, there is a 7-day hiccup back and forth, or a 7-day switcheroo, where in in the modern calendars, we are marking the middle of summer at August 1st, but in that solar cycle that I was just talking about, that's marked by that megalithic site, where we actually hit 15 degrees of Leo, which is the exact halfway point between summer solstice and fall equinox, is today, August 7th. So that's on your calendars, don't worry. But yes, whatever, we're here in the middle of summer. This is the mid marker of summer. Loaf mass and lammas mean exactly the same thing. They mean the mass of bread mass. And yeah, it's definitely bread mass. When you're pulling in this much grain, you damn skippy, we're making bread, kids. Scones, biscuits, what do you want? We've got it on deck. No problem. And Freyfest. And here we go. Freyfest is dedicated to the god Freyr, or the goddess Freya. And they represented sovereignty, virility, fertility, prosperity, sunshine and fair weather, good harvest, pleasure, etc., 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 as well as being diviners. Freya, in particular, was very well known for her divinatory skills and her capacity for prophecy. So behind all that stuff around kingship and queenship and sovereignty and leadership and stuff, there is this sense of like having these moments of speaking with the wise ones, or calling in that wisdom from outside sources to make sure that our guidance and our leadership is really dialed in and like on point. Okay. We're going to hang out there for just a second. Let me come back to this. So in the book, we have even more information about this stuff. The book, we have even more information about this stuff. But I will say this about the goddess and god arc that we are experiencing this time of year. Oh yeah, by the way, the sun is just about to hit the prism. I'm going to be covered in rainbows. It's fine. It's just magic. All pertinent deity aspects are living in the height of their power during this season. At this time, sitting in their seat of authority, grasping their will, capital W, and beginning to produce results on the physical plane. And so are we. This process will ultimately deplete them, and it'll deplete us too. But for now, we party. And again, compare that to Beltane. Compare that to the Sabbat on the other side of summer solstice. Right at Beltane, we're coming into that surging thing, and we're raising up, we're growing up, we're becoming turgid, and now we are letting some of that power go, and it's coming out of us, and we are depleted afterwards. The Holly King, known as the Dark Twin, oversees this half of the year, and they lock in their reign at summer solstice by killing off the Oak King, or blinding him, or otherwise marking the Oak King as no longer fit to lead. And so then the Holly King takes over. But also, this is overseen by the goddess with sex and death. The death of the old king, and a sacred knocking of boots, as we refer to it here on the channel. And interesting, because we have lots of holy weddings and holy marriages throughout the year, from Ostara, spring equinox, all the way through to fall equinox. Lots and lots of sacred marriages. But the sacred coupling that happens at Lughnasadh is much more about the transference of power and sort of the locking in of status with these deities, more so than it is about love or producing offspring or any of that stuff. It's like, I am now the consort of the goddess, and therefore I have power, and I'm in charge. The deity, the Holly King, and all of these other vegetation gods that we're talking about are living embodiments of power. The deity pushes that force into the harvest and then is sacrificed as the plants that are harvested. Potent stuff. Again, very, very potent stuff. And as I said, there is this beheading thing. There's something about throats being cut or eyes being blinded, that's really embedded in a lot of the mythos and the symbols that we see in those myths describing the various deities that go through this process. I'm just looking at my notes. Today's politics, oiling the gears with blood. Yeah, yeah, yes, previous Megan. That's still happening. We're still there. Okay, so now let us move on to global themes. Because up to now, we have been talking about pagans, heathens, woohoo, witches, weirdos, and other polytheists that have been practicing these nature-based, goddess-oriented systems. Well, what about everybody else around the planet? It's the same stuff. Now, it's not entirely the same stuff. A lot of the other religions are doing other things too, but they're also doing this. Authority, leadership, work, and labor. If we look at the other holidays that are celebrated literally around August 1st, August 2nd, we have the Feast of the Feast of the Grain Harvest from Old Greece. We have the Feast of Osiris from Egypt, the Day of Loki and Signon from our Odinist friends, the Feast of Sophia from our Catholic friends, the Feast of Spies from our Roman friends and ancestors, and then other things that take place in this time period. The wedding of Isis and Osiris, the feasts of Mary Magdalene, Hatshepsut's day. Hatshepsut was a pharaoh, a woman who took on the pharaoh kingship and depicted herself as a king, not a queen, in ancient Egyptian culture, built some of the greatest temples and monuments that still stand today in the vastness of what we think of as the Egyptian empire, the thousands of years that Egypt existed. When we say ancient Egypt, we're talking about a giant period of time with a lot of different eras to it. But then also we have things like the Festival of the Good Death, or Boa Morte, from our Candomblé, Voodoo, Santeria friends. We have the Bon Festival from Japan, and these are very focused on celebrating the sacred dead and our sacred ancestors. And then we have the Feast of the Birth of Mary and the Descent of the Holy Sophia from our Catholic friends and ancestors. So here again, a sacred birth, but much more about the queenship of Mary than it is celebrating the birth of Mary. And the Holy Sophia, the Feast of Holy Sophia, the Descent of the Holy Sophia. Sophia literally is the embodiment of wisdom and knowledge. So in the midst of all of this like fanfare and brashness and boldness and throwing our power around and all of that stuff, we also have these holidays that are like, who knows what's going on? Who are the wisdom keepers? We need to go find them and talk to them and make sure that we're all squared away with those folks. So, as I mentioned previously, we have our Irish festivals dedicated to Domnach Crom Dubh, held the first Sunday in August or the last Sunday in July. This Scottish Gaelic festival is dedicated to Crom Cruach in his Crom Dubh form. Crom Dubh means the dark crooked one and refers to the hobbled king after his sacrifice or defeat. Now, one of the other holidays that we see during this time period, and it's in the calendar, is the beheading of St. John. Isn't that interesting? St. John, of course, is the twin to Jesus. Jesus's holy day is December 24th. St. John's holy day is June 24th. So they've got it locked in on winter solstice and summer solstice. And here we are about 6 weeks later, almost 8 weeks later, because the beheading of St. John takes place deep in August and almost September. But again, it's this idea of these two power figures sort of doing this dance back and forth. But is John stabbed? No. Is he torn apart by horses? No. Did they give him a poison pill? No. They cut his head off. There you go, kids. Throughout August, we will see from indigenous tribes in North America the corn and harvest festivals that they are holding. So we're talking about folks like the Cherokee, the Creek, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Seminole, Timucua, and others celebrating their first corn harvests and the ripening of the second harvest, which is probably the squash. So, if you're not familiar, a lot of Native American groups who grow their own food work with a system called the Three Sisters, and it is corn, squash, and beans. And they grow them all together because all three plants celebrate or support all three plants. The corns grow up, they pull up a ton of nitrogen in the soil, which is really great for the squash and the beans. The beans use the corn stalks to literally vine up and climb up, and the giant leaves of the squash plants cover the ground and keep moisture and humidity in the soil rather than it drying up in the hottest part of the year. Pretty amazing stuff. Pretty cool. Again, ancient scientists, when we're talking about our ancient ancestors, they were thinking, they were paying attention, they were talking to each other about what they were seeing. But corn is coming ripe at this time of year. So we see lots of like green corn festivals and gold corn festivals happening. Celebrations continue throughout the lunar month of August and into the lunar month of September. Fires are put out and relit, and that's a thing that we see around the world as well. Worn out items are destroyed. Some people fast or purify themselves through various means. Debts are forgiven. So there's sort of almost a resetting kind of thing happening here. And valuable or powerful items are cleaned, repaired, and displayed. And this is one of my favorite ritual forms for Lughnasadh season, is the cleaning, the repairing, and the displaying of ritual items, jewelry, stuff that's flashy and special, things that are sacred to you. And it's a way of displaying your power. It's a way of displaying the majesty of you and your life and the things that you own. Okay. Also during this time, especially as we get closer and closer to fall equinox, we start to see a lot of these festivals move from a deep focus on the vegetation gods being here and then the vegetation gods dying to weather deities and water deities, in particular water goddesses. And this also sort of complements that idea that I was talking about of like what's happening on this side of the wheel on one side of summer solstice and then what's happening in the equal measure of time on the other side of summer solstice. Because water deities are really, really important over here. And then we have the sun stuff, even though, and it's also in the midst of Cancer, and then water deities again. And so we also see the birth and feast days of Yemoya and Oshun. These are two goddesses from the Yoruba pantheon. The Yoruba pantheon, vast and far-reaching. Their calendar goes back about 10,000 years. So, do with that what you will. And we, as an aside, we see holy days dedicated to Yemaya and Oshun throughout the year. Some of the biggest celebrations come in September, at the very beginning of September, which I love because that aligns us with Virgo. Haha. Whoa, wait a minute. Yeah, exactly. And those are not the only holy days. And why is that? Because of the incredibly terrible diaspora that African people have experienced over the last 400 to 500 years. Some of the folks who experienced that diaspora being sold into slavery or captured and stolen and taken into slavery and sort of scattered all over the planet, some of those people were able to bring some of their spiritual teachings and myths with them. And they either were able to reestablish their practices at the times that they would have been doing them naturally, or they synchronized their practices with Catholicism and celebrated on days that are also connected to saints or, very specifically, the Virgin Mary. So we will see holidays throughout the year, but September is a very, very big time for these two goddesses. And so let's take a second and look at them. Um, Oshun, absolutely a big deal. And here is another tangent. Um, we are going to very, very briefly talk about Oshun and Yemoyah. I am not an Ifa. I am not a Babaloa. If you are interested in learning more about Yoruba and its worldview, its religious structure, its magical practices, the myths that are connected to Yoruba, the deities that are connected to Yoruba, go find an Ifa or a Babaloa in your community and pay them to teach you about these deities. We're going to talk about them just a little bit here in this free class. But in no way do I want to present myself as an absolute authority on this magical system or what's up with these deities. This is just a little tiny bit of information about them that I've pulled together from sources that I trust. But highly recommend going and studying on your own. But make sure that you are working with people that actually are in the belief system. Okay, end of tangent. So, Oshun was the queen consort to King Shango, also pronounced Chongo. She definitely comes from Africa. She is a spirit deity, a deity, and a goddess because she was human at one point in her lifespan and then rose up to the status of goddess. She is a manifestation of the supreme being. And this is something that we see worldwide with goddesses, that goddesses are sort of their own being and they've got their stuff that they do, but they also have like this direct line to unnameable source, like the primary source behind all the gods. They often are depicted as an iteration or an emanation of that stuff. She expresses divinity, femininity, destiny, and divination. So here again, we have another deity that is overseeing, accessing the back rooms, right? Accessing the information that's behind the scenes, hopefully to help us get through this and the rest of the year. She oversees issues like love and beauty, rivers specifically, even though her name is Oshun. Took me a long time to figure that one out. Intimacy, freshwater, the Osun River specifically, wealth and diplomacy. And then the other major goddess that we are dealing with globally is Yemoyah. Imanya, she is the mother of the waters. The mother of all the Orishas, or all of the other deities, sort of emanate from her. She is a creator, a mother, a sovereign, a protector, a provider, and is literally sort of the deitic embodiment of water energy itself. She is the patroness and protector of women, children, and seafaring folk, childbearing folk. She is often depicted as a mermaid. That is very, very normal. And she is connected to salt water. And this is also something that we see in lots of different pantheons throughout the Northern Hemisphere, that we will have these two goddesses that are both very powerful, side by side. One is saltwater and one is freshwater. We see it in Babylonia. We see it in lots of different places. Or Sumerians, excuse me, with the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, one being above ground and one being below ground, one being salt, one being fresh. So there's lots of myth that we don't have time to get into embedded in that symbolism of what's the difference between water from above and water from below, or saltwater versus freshwater. Nova says Louisa Tesh is a great teacher of Oshun. Check her out. Awesome. Thank you so much for the reference. Absolutely. Absolutely. Please do. Excellent. Thank you. And Yemoyah, through the diaspora, has been connected to other goddesses like the Virgin Mary, Isis, and Kuan Yin. In fact, Yemoyah might be the seed of Isis. It might be that if we reach back far enough into the ancient past, we will see Isis is birthed out of the concept of Yemoyah. Maybe. I could be wrong about that. Check my references. I'm not perfect. But that might be what's going on there. Okay, so other things that we're seeing at this time of year is women's festivals and feasts of wisdom. So we've got Mat, Sophia, Saraswati, and Metis are just a short list of goddesses that are celebrated at this time of year, and they all literally are the living embodiments of the concept of wisdom or knowledge. We have Maru and healing, women's healing and fertility ceremonies happening at this time of year from our Hopi folks. We have Anant Chaturdashi from our Hindu friends and ancestors, which is a women's purification festival. And these are festivals that are celebrating women, femmes, people who give birth, and midwives all over the ancient and modern world throughout the Northern Hemisphere at this time of year. And again, looking at our Virgo symbolism, which we are just about to do, this makes a lot of sense. Okay. So, what are we doing with our astronomy and our astrology? So, as far as Western tropical astrology is concerned, these are the constellations that the sun is passing through right now. In fact, thank you, sidereal astrology. Thank you, Vedic astrology. The sun is passing actually through Cancer and Leo, not Leo and Virgo. Why this? Because our astrology is based in a system for 2,000 years ago, and the Catholics tried to break the wheel of the sky, and we're stuck there, but we'll fix it. It's fine. So we are moving through here, and what is important here are the fixed stars that are connected to these constellations. No time really to talk about the mechanics here, but the myths and the symbolism that are connected to these fixed stars are a big part of the myths and the general energies that we ascribe to these constellations. So our sun is passing through these constellations. We have in Leo Al-Turf. We have which means the mane, the start, the head. We have Algeba, the blade, Zosma, which is the loincloth, Denebula, the tail, and Regulus, or Regulus, which means the little king, the regent, the ruler. And possibly one of the most important fixed stars in the sky, Regulus. A very big deal, connected to a lot of stuff. And then as we move, and so we've talked about all that Leo pride, leadership stuff quite a bit here. So getting into Virgo now, we have Spica, the ear of grain. We have Vendomeatrix, the grape gatherer, and Sinnerma, the trailer, the good goer. And so what we see in the constellation of Leo, literally a lion, and different constellations look at Leo as covering different sizes in the sky. Some civilizations have Leo running all the way from what we think of as like the middle of Cancer almost to the end of Virgo. That constellation used to be absolutely massive. It's been broken up, and we work with it in a broken up way now. So there's Cancer, Leo, and Virgo. But Virgo is still a huge constellation. It takes up a giant swath of the sky. And it is a goddess. It is one of the remnants left over from the blending of science and magic from some of these previous civilizations that we inherit this information from. And so Virgo is this great goddess lying on their back about to give birth. And in their hands, they literally hold a spear of grain in one hand and a clump of grapes in the other. So we have bread, and then we get wine from grapes. Isn't there a deity? Isn't there a thing where there's like crackers and wine? That's a thing for, right? Whatever. I'll come up with it later. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. But we have this goddess laying on her back, about to give birth to in the midst of giving birth and about to give birth to the massive harvest that we see within and throughout the Northern Hemisphere at this time of year. First the grains, then the fruit and veg at second harvest, which is Mabon, and then at Samhain we have the nut harvest, but also the blood harvest, when those agrarian societies that we were talking about at the beginning of class have to choose which animals are they going to keep alive during winter, and which animals are going to be slaughtered, either because they can't be fed and or because that's meat that's going to be salted and cured and lived off of throughout winter. Other stuff that we are looking at this time of year, make that a little bit bigger for you so you can see it. We have the Delta Aquariid meteor showers. And something that I have come to notice working the wheel several times is that wherever we have a big cluster of holy days or festivals dedicated to the dead, dedicated to ancestors, we also have a boatload of meteor showers up above. Isn't that beautiful imagery, right? Interesting, too, to have that relationship of thinking about our ancestors as below ground, pushing up the crops that we are going to harvest, as well as above us, raining down on us. Cool stuff, lighting up the sky, all of that. We also see the Perseid meteor showers. We have our cereal crops coming to harvest all over the Northern Hemisphere. As I mentioned, we have Hindu Chaturmas. I didn't mention this. We're about a month into Hindu Chaturmas, which is the 4-month rainy season that hits that whole continent. We will also, during this time period, have the heliacal rising of Sirius and the heliacal rising of the fixed star Procyon. Okay, so now let us get into a little bit more of the astrology of this time period. And so I'm going to talk about these guys for just a second again. Another little sippy. It's too hot. It's like 70 degrees. That's too hot. From the book. Coming into this half of summer, it's time for us to put our shoulders back, fill our chests with fire, and let out a good roar. It's time to make our mark on this world and put our creations on pedestals. This is very much the vibe of Leo. Oh yeah, there's our sky guide. I totally forgot to show you that. There it is. That's a lot of information. This slide is in the bag of holding for patrons. Take a screenshot if you dare. I'll hold still. Okay. Before we get into the astrology, let me come back to this for just a second. I forgot we were going to do this. What do I want to talk about specifically on here? Our solar Lughnasadh. There it is, August 7th. We have it marked. That's when our planet is hitting, our planet is hitting 15 degrees of Leo in our orbit around the sun. And so this is the exact halfway mark between summer solstice and fall equinox. So we're right there in the middle. All of the cross-quarter holidays, aka the cross-quarter Sabbats, mark the 15-degree point in one of those astrological signs, and it's all the fixed signs. So 15 degrees of Taurus is Beltane. 15 degrees of Leo is Lughnasadh. 15 degrees of Scorpio is true Samhain. And 15 degrees of Aquarius is true Imbolc. Like I said, our ancient ancestors, pretty amazing scientists. They were absolutely paying attention to what was going on. Okay, so there's that. Here's this. For our moon work that we are doing this time around, we have a full moon right on Lughnasadh this year. How frickin' cool is that? Whatever it is that you like to do for a full moon, boom, it's going to be in alignment with this holiday this year, which is pretty damn cool. And so we have our full moon in Aquarius. As an aside, here's another tangent. When we're doing our moon work, and I'll repeat myself here in just a second, but whatever sign the sun has entered, that's where the new moon is going to be. And whatever sign is opposite, that's where the full moon is going to be. So the sun moves into Leo, Leo new moon, and then we look across the wheel to the opposing sign, Aquarius, and that's where the full moon is going to be. And that's the same for every sign, and this is going to be the same for you every year. You can pull out your natal chart at this point and find Leo in your natal chart and know that wherever Leo starts, that's basically the start of Lughnasadh season. And the sun is traveling through here right now. Our new moon is going to be somewhere in Leo. This is going to be true for you every year. Whatever house in your natal chart is connected to this portion of the wheel is going to get lit up. There's going to be a new moon moment for you. And then look directly across your natal chart to Aquarius, and that's where the full moon is going to be. And then we'll move into Virgo, and the same thing, because Lughnasadh season covers all of Leo and all of Virgo. So we'll talk about Virgo stuff in just a second. But here we have our new moon in Leo, the full moon is first this year at 9 degrees of Aquarius, August 1st. And the journaling work that I encourage you to do around this is asking yourself, what is allyship? How can I be a better ally to support community? Oftentimes, the best leaders are actually serving their community, and they're giving their community everything they need to succeed. That is the earmark of a true leader, in my opinion, is that they are able to humble themselves in that way and really be of service to the people around them, rather than bombastically sitting on a throne covered in velvets and jewels and just yelling orders at people. So how do we become better allies? What is allyship, and how do we become better allies? And I've said this before, but this is kind of a trick question, because it's not entirely up to us to decide if we are good allies. The people we're helping is who decides if we're being good allies. That's actually where the back and forth is there. And so in this process, we also have to be checking in, right? We can't just be throwing stuff out and being like, I supplied you with parts, figure it out. Did I give you the right things? Did I give you enough? Did I give you too much? Is there something else that you need that I don't know about? That's the serving part. And any way that we can step into that in community is really important. It might be tiny ways, it might be big ways. You know, we all are living our own lives, but that's what's up here. And then we have our first new moon of this portion of the cycle. This is our first full moon and our first new moon of Lughnasadh. 23 degrees of Leo, August 16th. List 3 talents you want to learn or improve. Make a quick plan to do so, then demonstrate and show off. What's up with that? In Leo season, we are performing a little bit. We are on stage. The spotlight is on us. It is our time to shine. It's our time to carry our personal torch as high as we can get it and make it as bright as possible. And I get you. and really celebrating what it is that makes you unique and special and amazing, and showing it off a little bit. Even if we make some mistakes, it's gonna be okay. It gives somebody else a break from being in the spotlight all the time. Like, you go sit in the audience for a while. I'll go up on stage and make a fool out of myself tonight. This is actually really, really important in ways that are kind of hard to put into words, but taking your share of being in the spotlight, as well as taking your share of taking responsibility for keeping the masses entertained, in a sense. And then we will move into Virgo. And Virgo season kicks off with a super blue full moon at 7 degrees of Pisces. Why is it super blue? Well, it is a blue moon because it is the second full moon in a month. We have one August 1st and we have one August 30th because the lunar cycle is 29 and a half days and August is 31 days long. So we get 2 moons in the month of August. And it is a super moon because it is going to be the moon that is the closest to us all year long. Some sources that I found when I was looking this up this year are also listing the August 1st moon, this full moon on August 1st. They're also listing this as a super moon because it's pretty close, but I'm particular about it, and I'm like, no, only the very closest one counts. All the others are like almost, but not quite there. But, do as you will. But we have this super blue moon in Pisces, August 30th. And when we shift our energy into Virgo season, there is a really important shift that happens for us here. Well, I don't want to repeat myself, so I'll talk about this, and then I'll say that. So we have our full moon, 7 degrees Pisces, August 30th. And in this moment, we are considering the toll that the body takes living in this world. Yeah, I know. The thing is, I wrote this years ago. I wrote this way before COVID and way before everything else that's happening on the planet. So it's witchcraft, people. This is why they killed us. This is why they burned us in other times, because we said stuff like this. But this is a great season to acknowledge the healers in your life, past and present. Maybe there was somebody that you've worked with, or somebody's writings that have inspired you who has passed on. Write a letter to them and burn it and send that information, that thank you, energetically. Or maybe you're dealing with a healer now. Maybe there is somebody who's holding that space for you now. Say thank you to them. This is a really, really powerful time to do that, to acknowledge the work that they're doing that makes it possible for us to keep doing our work. And then we have our new moon in Virgo, 21 degrees, September 14th. And so, let me also say that this super blue full moon, August 30th is our last full moon of summer. And this new moon in Virgo at 21 degrees, September 14th, this is our last new moon of summer. Yeah, we're already there. And this is what I was talking about at the beginning of class. We start out this season riding high, and we slowly begin the descent down into the darkness. So, if there's Lughnasadh business that you have not completed, these are your last two chances. August 30th and September 14th, these are your last two chances to get that business taken care of. Okay. And with this new moon, September 14th, if at all possible, take some time to truly be alone. Consider the things that you have grown and what all has grown under your care this year. Okay. So, in Virgo season, our attention begins to turn to the little details in life, taking care of our bodies, taking care of our homes, and looking to tie up loose ends. I think of Lughnasadh, or Lughnasadh, like the high point of a roller coaster where you hover weightless before hurtling back down to earth, reading out of the book. During the first half of Lughnasadh, the energy wants us to strut. We are the new sovereign, the young leader. We are the golden rock star, the glittering pop star, the dazzling dazzler, under the flashing lights, taking up the stage and taking the mic and hogging the camera. We are high on the heat of summer and the intoxication of people and short nights and less sleep and warm skin and the smells of blooming flowers and bonfires and fireworks and life in general. The summer feels like it could go on forever. That's us, right? That point, standing straight up. Spontaneous adventures feel completely possible. Living is relatively easy. Looking out across the land, the first harvest is coming in. Golden grains, boats full of fish. You can sleep outside. Lughnasadh wants us to go for it. Blow it out even. Our budding fruits are ripening, and we are beginning to see the initial results from the year so far. And I want to emphasize this. I truly encourage us to really go hard at this first half of Lughnasadh season or Lughnasadh season. I really encourage us to go hard, to go a little too hard. to blow it out, to push ourselves, to stretch ourselves a little thin. That doesn't mean spend all your money. That doesn't mean not take care of yourself, but it means kind of go to your edges, right? Like go to your limits, push that a little bit in whatever ways are safe for you. Don't sue me. don't come at me. But witness that, and especially in ways that kind of push you psychologically or push you emotionally, that feel a little risky to you. Thinking back to that performing thing, right? Getting up on stage and like doing the dance in front of everybody or singing the song, or I just learned how to play this song on guitar, blink, 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 right? That thing, it's really, really important for us to show out a bit during this season. Partly because it's honoring the abundance of power and energy that we have right now. And also because it's only down from here. And so this is, if we're going to do it, this is the moment to do it. Because that moment is going to slip away. As we move into the final weeks of summer, during Virgo season, we can feel a little overblown or spent or hung over from the excesses of summer. A hermitage is just what the soul needs. Getting back to the personal, the daily routine, the simple self-care elements, the personal rituals of life. Also, it's hard to believe that this incredibly magical time will end. But the elder in us knows the wheel turns. And this is something else that's very special about Lughnasadh season, specifically the Leo half, the first 4 weeks of Lughnasadh season, is a lot of sources compare this to the mythical golden era of humanity, when we were still in the grace of the gods and goddesses and nobody had to work and everything was abundant and perfect forever. And then, whatever happened, and now we have this, right? We have credit ratings and, Elon Musk, for Christ's sake. In a lot of myths and a lot of the spiritual teachings that are out there, there is this mythical golden era where humans just had stuff and everything was abundant and beautiful. And there is an echo of that idea in the first half of Lughnasadh season. But then we step into Virgo and it's like, I need to attend to myself a little bit. I need to take care of myself a little bit. The wheel turns. Summer will end. Begin tending to the body, recalling the self-work like movement and diet that is needed in fall and winter. Work with and thank your community healers and people who hold space for us to have these hermetic moments. So the word hermit comes from hermetic, or hermetic comes from hermit. These are connected together. And I think some of the best ways for us to understand that is to work through tarot. Tarot for me is like flashcards for all of this stuff. And after the big blowout of Leo season, again, we might be feeling a little overblown, like we overdid it a little bit, we overstretched a little bit, and Virgo is an opportunity for us to call back our power a little bit, call back our energy, to restore ourselves, to recuperate, to reorganize ourselves a little bit. And notice how I'm saying a lot of re's there. The planet Mercury is the ruling planet of Virgo, and it is exalted in the sign of Virgo. But a lot of folks interpret this as, this is the place, this is the sign that is the most like a Mercury retrograde. Gemini also is ruled by Mercury, and Gemini very much is Mercury direct, Mercury straightforward and heading into, whatever its adventures are. But Virgo is like Mercury retrograde, where we pull the car over, we stop, we reorganize things, we check the map, we recalibrate, and then we head out again for the next portion of the adventure. And that, to me, is the very best way that we can utilize Virgo season. Virgo season moves fast, and It's still 4 weeks, just like all the other signs, but the shift, the big shift between summer and fall happens for us in Virgo season. And so the start of Virgo season, oh my gosh, it's so sunny, it's beautiful, it's August. The end of Virgo season, it's fall equinox. The days are officially going to be shorter than the nights from that point forward. It is officially going to start to cool off to whatever degree, goddess bless our boiling planet. But that shift is going to happen during that sign. Virgo, of course, is a mutable sign. So again, this is the shift. You can, as well, check out your natal chart and look at where is Virgo in your natal chart. This is the same as the last 4 weeks of Lughnasadh season. And whatever house or houses in your natal chart are connected to Virgo, those are the portions of your life where you might really feel this moment of like, I need to go inwards, or I need to have a little privacy, or I need to do this work by myself. I'm going to work better alone here than with a group. But we get it squared away, we get it dealt with, and then we come back out and we be social in a different way when we hit Libra season, Mabon season, fall equinox, but we'll talk about that then. So let's dive in on this tarot. So these are the two main cards that we can work with in Lughnasadh season. Strength, because it connects us to the sign of Leo, and the Hermit, because it connects us to the sign of Virgo. Now, this is not true for all magical systems. This is a way, not the way. So if you are inclined to work with different cards during this season, go for it. But these are the ones that I'm going to talk about. And, you know, we've got the Strength card here, who I refer to this being as a vulgar saint. And vulgar in the sense of like, I have my feet on the ground, but I'm still a holy being. I am still a meat-based being, but I still have a sacredness about me. I mean, look at that infinity symbol directly over their head, right? We don't see that too often in tarot, so we know that it's important. And they're dressed all in white. This has nothing to do with caucasity. This is about a purity of intention. They are a direct emanation of source, an idea that we have already discussed here in this class. So they are a direct emanation of source, and they are reaching down to the animalistic parts of us, the parts of us that maybe are a little short-sighted or grounded more deeply in satisfaction for the next 5 minutes or short-term goals or whatever, grudges, that type of stuff, right? Not the most holy. But Leo is really asking us to kind of combine those things. The Strength card is really asking us to combine those things and to figure out what is my path between what I perceive as holy and what I perceive as mundane. Sometimes I'll say vulgar or based, but I don't mean that in a bad way. I don't mean it in a negative way. I mean it in a earth-based, mundane, physical world, finite kind of way, versus this human who represents the infinite, holy, sacred portions of us. However that stuff works out for you. And so in the Strength card and in Leo season, we're kind of wrestling between these two things, and at the same time trying to find our individual pathway between those two ideas, and taking a little bit from both sides, and figuring out what it looks like for us to be sacred and profane at the same time. But that's a lot of work, and that's a difficult road to walk. And it's not something that we necessarily can do every day. We're talking about stuff that gods and goddesses do, not just normal ass humans. And so we do need this moment to recuperate and to go back in and reflect on our experiences as well. Whatever it is that's revealed to us in Leo season, whatever is revealed to us in the Strength card, is something that we need to then go reflect on in privacy in Virgo season and the Hermit card. Let me take a minute and think about this. Let me go back to my cave and ponder what I've experienced, what I've seen, what I did, what I said, how that all play out, how did I feel about that, where would I like that to go next. Let me review and reorganize before we head into the dark half of the year. So, let me put up this. Here are the 4 biggies that we can be working with. We have Leo in the Strength card, the Sun in the Sun card. The Sun is the ruling quote-unquote planet of Leo. And then we have Virgo in the Hermit card, and we have Mercury in the Magician card, Mercury being the ruling planet of Virgo. Hey, wait a minute. Is that another infinity symbol over that character? I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Wait a minute, what? That's kind of wacky. Look at all the roses everywhere. I wonder what that's all about. Okay. This deck here is the Builders of the Aditum deck. This is one of my favorite tarot decks under the sun. You buy it black and white, and you paint the cards to develop an intimate relationship with the symbols on each of the cards. And so to break this down even further, if you are a tarot fan and you want to go ham, you can break this down even further. So during Leo season, we can work with the Sun card and the Strength card, and then we can also work with the 5, 6, and 7 of Wands. Now, this is a magical system utilized by some people. Again, this is not universal, and there are other magical systems that would align different minor arcana with the signs. This is just the system that I like to work with. But again, if you work with different teachings, go with that. So, as we ride the high of summer, we come into an energy current that could be described as an original vibe of our spirit, as expressed in the Strength card. And note this, lots of decks depict that being that's in the Strength card naked or in transparent clothing, not necessarily white. And I really think about the Wiccan and the pagan practice of going skyclad or going naked in our rituals. Much easier to do during summer than it is winter, depending on where you live. You know, running out into the grasses barefoot and butt naked, in the middle of August versus running out into the snow or ice of January or February. Okay, wow, right? Like, that's a very, very different vibe. But there also is something about the naturalness, the lack of artifice in nudity that's really important here. The authenticity of, this is me in all my glory, and I don't need a purple robe. I don't need a sacred crown. I don't need fancy trappings to be all that I am. Maybe even in some ways those things are holding me back from fully radiating and expressing myself. A wild, natural way of being. One long, mighty, authentic flex. Many religions believe the ease of summer reflects a golden age, a time of peace and abundance that humans have lost by not attending to the old ways. Quote unquote. If only we could wrangle our lower urges, we could potentially have this golden kingdom again. It's that wrangling, or getting a hold of our desires and fears from this individual lifetime, that is the key. All of us have an invitation to the higher dimensions of existence. But before we have traversed the labyrinth of this reality, we may just not be tuned into those other realms. It is the challenge of existence that not only tunes us in to our personal power, but actually creates the maze of misunderstanding that we must wander before we can know why we have incarnated in this and all lifetimes. Before we can remember that, we've been walking in the higher realms the whole time. We just got lost in the here and now. However, in our day-to-day lives, we forget that we are actually a family. We are actually a team. And I would say that that is a truer thing than maybe at any other time in human history. We are so detached and alienated from each other as individuals, as collectives, as communities, species in whole. I don't know that there's ever been a time in human history where we have been less connected to each other. And look at the effects of that, right? Like, we're not doing good as a species right now. It's not okay. We fight each other simply to play devil's advocate. We stay in little ponds so we don't feel small. We display power for the sake of displaying power. We hold our ego righteously aloft, bristling with offense, come hell or high water. We sate our spirit's longing in the short-term pleasures this world distracts us with. We create friction for the sake of friction. As a species, many of us have forgotten that we are meant to be the window panes that allow the light to shine through. We have forgotten to be the light and to be conductors of the light. We could be stewards for each other and the planet. As summer begins to wane, we have a chance to pull back and think about our connection and our responsibility to our real personal power, to the future and the present. What is your responsibility to build a better now? And if we all began to consider that and worked towards it, what kind of a world would we be producing? And given that way of thinking, what kind of a reality are we harvesting currently? Is there a way to approach this kind of competitive, small world view with something more performative, something more expansive, remembering that all of the world is a stage? This is a season where it is vitally important that we live our life as a form of art. In the Thoth deck, Aleister Crowley, Lady Frida Harris created this incredibly beautiful tarot deck, the Thoth deck. If you haven't checked it out, highly recommend it. The Temperance card, Sagittarius, the last fire sign that we hang out with in the year, is referred to as the art. And they don't mean that as something that's external to us. They are saying our life is the art. Living it is the art. And so that idea of performing and that idea of being a star on stage and all that, there's a deeper meaning to that idea. There's a deeper meaning to that image of it is vitally important that I go and I perform what and who I am to the very best of my ability. Knowing that also, there is something deeper in me that's eternal, and I can take this costume off and I can put on a different costume life after life after life. If you don't believe in reincarnation, that's okay. We all live multiple lives in this one singular life. So the metaphor still works, right? But the idea is that I need to take that moment as seriously as I possibly can. It is my job to play that character and play that role and be that star as hard as I can, as deeply and as authentically as I can. And being detached from it at the same time so that I don't take it too personally. When things go wrong, I don't take it too personally if stuff gets weird. I don't take it too personally if somebody doesn't like the way that I do my thing, right? It's my job to do my thing. It's your job to do your thing. We're all going to be stars on the stage. And I'm saying something as an esoteric spell in this too. If you're working tarot, the star card is connected to Aquarius. Hey, wait a minute. Isn't that where our full moon is in Leo? Interesting. I'm a star. We are all stars. And we are living our life as an artistic expression of our spirit's potential. Just that. That's all we're doing. No big deal. But I truly encourage you to be the red carpet star of your own life and be fabulous and burn out a little bit. Um, and and then recuperate from that. And then we go into the dark half of the year and we go and have that trip on the other side of the wheel. We're not quite there yet, but we're coming close. And so we want to utilize Leo season as this opportunity to flare, right? Solar flare as hard as we can. And then we take our little hermitage during Virgo season and we recuperate from that blowout a little bit. And also we reflect on, what did that feel like? What did I do? What was the feedback that I got from people? And also utilizing that time to pivot us out of that work and into whatever we're going to be doing in the dark half of the year. We will talk about this a lot in our weekly podcasts as we move through Virgo season. A month plus from now, we're not there yet, but it's on the horizon. Where we're going to slowly start to put away our summertime life and put away the life that we lead in the bright half of the year and bring out the stuff that we do and are and need for the dark half of the year. But again, we're not quite there yet. So, in the book, I have another big page of folklore and information about bog bodies and harvesting rituals and other deities that have been beheaded and play a major role during this lifetime or during this season. I guess lifetime too, sure, but also during this season. But there's no time. So let us move on to a roundup of everything that we've talked about this evening. These are our main ritual forms for Lughnasadh. If you're moved to do something else, please do it. Listen to your intuition on that. But also, these are traditional things that we see cultures all over the planet, and especially pagans, getting up to at this time of year, past and present. Sacrifice. And again, sacrifice can look like a lot of different things. That could be sacrificing a bad habit, sacrificing a regressive lifestyle, etc., etc. It doesn't have to be sacrificing, your favorite chocolate, but it could be that too. But also thinking about the sacrifice of the harvest, right? Like it's only got so much to give. Burning a wicker man. We see this practice utilized at Beltane, at Litha, and here at Lughnasadh. Definitely a big deal. We still see it today in Burning Man, which happens in Lughnasadh season here in America. Feasting, because of course the planet is just, abundance on abundance on abundance. So absolutely feasting and celebrating that abundance. As I mentioned before, making or repairing sacred items and displaying them. That could be holy items. That could be heirlooms that you've inherited through your family. That could be your favorite pieces of jewelry or your favorite pieces of clothing that, have been damaged or something and you haven't worn it since then. Spend the time, spend the money if you can to get those things tailored, repaired, and pull it out of the closet and get to it. Getting frisky in a field of grain, 100%. Nova, I saw that you were like, yes, I like humping in the thunderstorms. Yes, absolutely. Getting frisky, whatever that means for you. All of us have a different relationship with that stuff. Saving seeds. This is huge because, again, the sun is at its height and falling. But this is kind of the last portion of the fullness of the sun's power. And so when we are harvesting those seeds, we're kind of taking the best. We're taking the cream of the crop, as it were, and utilizing it towards something. Hobby horses, picking berries, torchlight processions, the good kind. Don't get shitty with me, because don't bring your Christo-fascist bullshit into my class. We're not talking about that at all. But torchlight processions, very, very big deal. We see that in a lot of different cultures of going out and marching through the fields with their torches held high, kind of showing the grain how high to grow. Climbing a hill, hand fastings, and as I mentioned before, a lot of our sacred weddings and sacred marriages at this time are more about power than they are about offspring or love. Making corn dollies. This is another very popular tradition. It starts here at Lughnasadh. We will see more emphasis on making corn dollies at Mabon and at Samhain season, but corn dollies play a role in various cultures' traditions from now all the way through Imbolc next year, which is the holiday that is exactly across from us on the other side of the wheel. And the corn dollies are all about the past. They're about old energy being carried through and planted into the new cycle. And then going through a harrowing experience. Again, don't sue me, but don't kill yourself. But something that feels like a challenge, something that feels risky, something that feels scary to you. And again, that doesn't have to be base jumping off a cliff. I mean, if that's the level that you're at, cool, good luck. But it can be anything that feels like it's challenging or frightening or a little scary to you. Very, very appropriate at this time of year. So, when you are building your altars, if you build an altar for Lughnasadh, first off, you can do whatever you want. Secondly, given the weather in most places in North America at this time of year, lots of people build their altars outdoors and leave the altar outdoors. If that makes sense for you, by all means, please do that. That's exactly what you should be doing. If you don't have an outdoor space, and many of us don't who live in the city, that's very realistic, whatever makes sense for your living space, do that. You see the colors that I'm wearing, and you've seen the colors that we've utilized through this whole class. Use those colors for your altar or your work table, whatever you like to call it. So hot reds, burnt oranges, golden yellows, the gold of grain, and even peridot green, that green gold color, all very, very appropriate at this time of year. And then using symbols like the sun, grains, bread, literally, especially if you bake your own bread, absolutely put it directly on your altar. A decapitated head, very casual, that won't freak out friends and family when they come to visit, not at all. And then a burning wheel. And you can have a depiction of a burning wheel, and or also there are many traditions of creating wheels and covering them in hay and tar or other flammable items and literally rolling them down a hill to replicate this idea of the descending solar god. So all of these are very appropriate for your altars. Other things, actually, I'll come back to that. Other things that you can put on your altar, food and drink in general. All your corns, all your grains, blackberries, which are coming into this time of year. Ginger connects really deeply to all of our solar work. Absinthe connects really deeply to Virgo energy. Fennel and licorice and absinthe are all very Virgoian. Beets, baked goods, of course, I think I've said that probably 50 times, but I'll say it again. Barley wine and barley water and any of our fermented delicious beverages that are coming from the grains that we're harvesting at this time. Olives and chicory also connect us to Virgo energy. Very, very appropriate to put all of this stuff on your altar. And out of all of the Sabbats, Lughnasadh, Mabon, and Samhain are definitely the three Sabbats that it is the most appropriate to have food on your altar as a means of like acknowledging that abundance that's happening at this time of year. Plant helpers, mugwort, marigold, poppy, meadowsweet, honeysuckle, all of this stuff is connecting us to Leo energy and Virgo energy, solar energy, mercurial energy. A lot of these things are in season at this time of year, or coming into their ripeness at this time of year. If you noticed in the background of all of our slides, we have big red poppies because poppies and grains grow hand in hand. But also, I'll say this. Of all of these things that I'm showing you, and I'm going to show you some incense and oils here in just a second, utilize all this stuff in whatever way makes sense. So if it's safe to eat it, eat it. Even if I listed it as an incense or, a plant helper, if it's safe to eat, eat it. So poppy seeds, yes, absolutely. Poppy seed muffins, 100%. That's a sacred bread to put on the altar, 100%. Um, or wearing it, and or maybe you have a piece of jewelry that has honeysuckle on it, or maybe you have a t-shirt that has grains on it. All very appropriate ways of working with all of this stuff in this time of year. Our mineral helpers, sunstone, gold, ruby, these all connect us to a Leo, pyrite as well. But then things like peridot and geodes and fossils connect us to Virgo, and I love that geodes and fossils fall under the auspices of Virgo. It makes so much sense to me. That like ancient earthy energy, our mineral ancestors. And then our animal helpers, all big cats, of course, because of Leo season. Our serpents, our crocodiles, peacocks, and roosters. Pigs as well. I don't know why I don't have this on the list, but pigs are a big deal with a bunch of the goddesses that we hang out with at this time of year. And then last but not least, I think. I say that, and then there's always like one more slide. But amber, benzoin, frankincense, neroli, rose, aloes wood, all of these in particular really align us with Leo energy. Oak moss and rosemary really align us with Virgo energy. But also note, amber, frankincense, neroli, and aloes wood, also called oud, they're expensive. So, be kind to yourself if you go to the incense shop and you're like, holy moly, that is way outside of my budget. That's okay. There's other stuff we can work with. Usually you can find frankincense pretty cheap in some places. But these are regal. They are royal scents, and they are scents that would have been in the royal blends of different sovereigns around the world. So these were the most precious of scents that were offered up to the gods and goddesses. So offer them up to yourself if it's within your means to do so. And then again, rose, oak moss, rosemary are all connecting us to Virgo energy, the sacred Sophia energy, the Virgin Goddess energy, Virgin Mary, Isis, Yemaya are all very connected to these scents. Oh, that brings us right back to the beginning. So yeah, I guess I am pretty close to the end. There's our tarot helpers, and is there anything else in here that I wanted to show you? Oh yeah, just that. This is where I say thanks, patrons. You guys, oh my god. First of all, it's all your fault, okay? Look, if you've been watching this video and you're like, what is this lady doing? It's these 86 people over here that have encouraged me and told me I should be doing this. Massive, massive thank yous to my patrons and students who work with me. Again, genuinely, you guys make it possible for me to do this. You literally are paying my bills. This is what I do. I am a witch. And it is through your support that I am capable of doing this. So thank you so much. And it's because of your support that these classes have been free since COVID kicked in here on YouTube. And it's just been a very special and wild ass ride to receive this support and do the thing. So if you are wanting more information, go check out my Patreon. Folks that subscribe at the Venus level and higher have access to the bag of holding, wherein you will find the workbook for the Sabbats, digital spells, digital altars, playlists, a lot of extra material that I don't have time to share, as well as all of the slides that I did share in class and all of that good stuff. Oh yes, there is one more thing that I wanted to share. Let me scooch back a few slides to our meditations for Lughnasadh season. And I encourage you to write these down in your journal, and you can either work with them during your Lughnasadh ritual if you actually do one, or just hang out with these concepts and these questions throughout the season and work with them whenever it feels right to do so. You've also got your journaling to do on the full moons and new moons too. So what have you sown this year? And what is already coming to fruition? What loose ends or toxic situations are draining you? And can you attend to those situations with positivity? And I want to pause in that when I say positivity, I mean love and respect for yourself and for the other people involved. If you are sacrificing yourself to meet someone else's needs, we're not hitting the mark. And if we are sacrificing other people to attend to ourselves, we are also definitely missing the mark. So, in what ways can we deal with toxic or draining people or situations in a way that is with love and respect for everybody that is involved? The most healthy way through. Maturity, right? One of our key words for this holiday. And can you anticipate the harvest? What is coming? You might literally go out and lay on the earth and listen to the ground and see if you can hear it coming. Check out, the diviners and the fortune tellers and the soothsayers in your community and ask them for guidance and clarity around what is coming in the harvest. But this is the time to ask and the time to check in. All right, my friends, that is Lughnasadh season 2023. That's Ozma in the background. First time I've had a live student for class since March of 2020.
I was only 2 hours late.
Well done. Thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for being here. If you're watching in the future, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I hope this helps. If you have questions, comments, or corrections, please reach out to me. I'm learning too. And I don't mean to say that I've got this all perfected. This is a organic living entity, this collection of classes, and it is evolving as we move. But thank you for 9 years. It's been pretty fucking wild doing this for 9 years every 7 weeks. And here's maybe to another 9 or even more. Who knows when I'm going to die? Probably never. So who knows how many decades I'll be doing this. But that is Lughnasadh 2023. Good luck with your harvest. Go be the sacred clown on the red carpet. Hold your torch high, shine bright, and blow it out. Because this is the last bits of summer. So use them wisely. Blessed be.